Take two with Tyler Murray. First one was my mistake. Okay, so we are looking at the GM valve springs that go inside one of the 602 crate engines, and 602 is not the cubic inch, that is just the order number of what it is. These are valve springs that come right from GM. There are 16 that come in a box because there is intake and, right?
Yep, there's an intake and exhaust valve for each cylinder.
Okay. One of the big things is we heard about people who got in trouble for valve springs. Did they just use the wrong part number, or are there aftermarket companies that make these?
Well, if you know what you're getting and you plan on getting what you're supposed to, there should be no misconceptions. But there is other springs out there on the market that you can get, and some people have chose to run them. They run you a little bit more money, and some really aren't even a performance advantage, but they're more just a longevity. But the rule book still states that we must run a GM spec valve spring, so that is what we are mandatory to run. So when the tech guy opens it up and sees that it is not the GM valve spring, then...
And you said it's visible?
Yes.
For a lot of them?
Yep, you can tell.
Part number 102-12811, made in Mexico. That is it right there. So you told me that the valve springs are not always the same, and you simplify this, basically a spring spatcher. As you squish it, you'll see how strong or loose it is.
Yeah.
What's the proper term? Or
so that is, I guess it'd still be a load rate machine. You'd take your installed height and you would squish it to your installed height. And like I know when I was at Enders, we would take them all and then we'd line them up from heaviest to lightest and then completely mix them all up. So I know Adam told me guys say, oh, well, this guy's getting this guy's getting that, and that is completely untrue, at least about Enders racing engines. I know that, because if this one rated 84 and then this one rated 76, they're all going to get switched up in the same pile. Unless they rated too low, then they would just not use them.
Gotcha.
So that's a good thing about over there, is everyone's getting a fair. You're not getting. If you're not spending the most money, you're not getting slouched because you're not a favorite, and that is what this sport needs: is zero favoritism, and
consistency,
equality.
Yeah, where the setup and the driver matter instead of what's under the hood. You also told me, and I don't want to mention the name of the company, but you said there's one company that will actually make sure that all of those are the same. They'll buy a bunch and then make sure they put in the ones that are all the same.
That's what they tell you. I don't know if it's really worth the money. I don't think.
Okay.
There's a lot of markup in it for them.
Yeah, somebody's got to test each one and put the set together. Okay.
And I don't really know if the advantage is really there. If this spring rates 76 and this one rates 84, I don't think that thing's really going to know a difference.
And how often do you change these?
I go every 3 to 4 races, depending on, well, not really depending, just right about 3 to 4 races is where we stand and try to keep them changed out. If you wanted to, I suppose you could, if you had the machine, you could take them out and rate them after, and then if they're still good, you could run them again and save yourself some money. But rule of thumb is 3 to 4 races. Okay.
All right. And we're going to show you how that actually happens here as well, because we're going to go over here to the car now. This is the crate engine and the car that he's going to be running this year. We already loosened the bolts on the valve cover gasket, or the valve cover, so we took that off. So let's see if I can find the right angle to get in there so you can see them. There you go. So you see the springs there. Okay. Which is intake and which is exhaust?
Oh, no, you really had to
I had to confuse you, huh? Okay. Because obviously there's 2 per cylinder, as you can see here.
So I think...
Rocker arms are what's on top.
This would be intake, this would be intake.
So the one on the right.
Yep, and then this would be intake, and then that would be intake, because they're the runners of the intake.
Okay. So how tough is this to change at this point? We got to loosen the rocker arms, right?
Yep, you take all the spark plugs out, because we have a...
Really?
Yep. So you would pressurize the cylinder. So the valve, if you don't pressurize the cylinder, the valve will drop.
Yeah, that's why you just turn the motor a little bit, right, until you get.
Well, that is like, see how this one's loose? That would be one that you could crack the GM nut off and take that rocker off, pull the push rod out. And
the push rod, the top of the push rod is right here, okay, goes down inside. Okay, so when you hear somebody breaking a push rod, what that does is that prevents the rocker arm from moving up and down, and then basically you lose the cylinder at that point, right, Tyler?
Yes.
Okay. So he's going to show us what he does here. All right, so now he'll pull out just the nut on the end of the push rod, pretty much, right? Is what we would call that.
So there's your rocker. Here's your push rod.
Oh, okay.
Now, like I said, you would pressurize the cylinder. Then there's a tool that comes on here. It's just a big lever that'll compress the spring. And then you take a little magnet and you pull your retainers out, put the next spring on, compress it, put your retainers back in, and then usually you just finger tight the rockers. So once you could spin it back over in case a lifter, because it's a hydraulic lifter engine, if a lifter bleeds or something, you don't want to start setting valves and then this one's too tight because the motor rolled over or something
Gotcha.
like that.
Okay.
So that's about that.
So now he's going to put it back together for us.
A little trick for anybody that hasn't learned this already. All of us crate guys, do yourself a favor. Go take your valve cover off and just run a bead of yellow silicone all the way around the valve cover and then stick your gasket down in the valve cover and let it sit. Don't put it right back on.
No?
Let the silicone set and let it seal, and then you won't have trouble trying to put the gasket back on, and you think you got the gasket on and then you realize, oh shoot, I just fired it up and now it is leaking oil. So that would be a bad thing.
Okay.
So now you just set your push rod back down in, set your rocker back on. Oop, backwards. Then you got a little, I don't know what you really call this, but this is just
a nut or something.
This is just a tapered.
Oh, almost like a washer almost.
Yep, it's a tapered spacer, so the
Okay.
rocker runs true. And then you put this back on here.
Just going to finger tight it for now, obviously.
Yep,
We'll
I'll go
this
through
later.
this. This is our motor.
I used to see guys
from
back in the day
last year.
adjusting those in the pits. Not a
Oh,
good
yeah.
thing, right?
Oh well, back
Dusty and dirty, right?
back in the day, like a solid roller camshaft, that it was a lot more crucial. And what's nice about these is you just set these at zero backlash. So just when you can spin, my rule of thumb is when you can spin the push rod, that's about good.
Okay.
You don't want it to be too tight or too loose when it's got a little bit of tension on it, but not too much.
Okay, and this is interesting because this is different than engines years ago, where the bolts for the valve cover went, because back in the day they would be here on the side, and we got another motor over here where there were four bolts, and now there's just there's still four, but now they're in the center. Okay, so you see on the top there, and he just didn't have it on. Oh, backwards again. Okay. All right, and there's four bolts. One of them goes in like that.
Yep.
Tighten it down.
Now we
Do you
didn't-
torque it or just
anybody, you don't over tighten them, but they.
otherwise the gasket will come out through the side, right?
Yep,
And now,
I usually go about one click with a gun lightly, and then I'll grab a ratchet and a socket and tighten them up.
okay. Yeah, and sometimes if that valve cover gaskets come out, that can get the little ticking noise, right?
If you lose oil, it'll get ticking.
It'll get ticking. Okay, all right. All right, and of course, if you have a problem with the header too, you get, you like even here, if something like, say somebody really slams really hard in the header here, it can actually make it tick then too, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, all right. Hope you guys learned something here. We got one more. I hope you caught this one. This was the last of the three. I hope you caught the one on the rear end, and of course the one on what comes with a crate and what does not. Tyler, thanks so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.